Hello and welcome to the Symmetry Sessions podcast. I'm your host, Heather McPaul. Join me for in-depth, down-to-earth, and casual conversations about all things healthy, wealthy, and wise. We delve into topics related to therapy, mental health, relationships, business, and more with guests from all walks of life. And even though I am a professionally licensed counselor, this is just a show, and the information presented is just for informational, educational purposes only. It's definitely not meant to replace getting professional help from a doctor or a therapist. So please seek that help from a qualified healthcare professional if you need it. And if it is an emergency, please call 988 or other appropriate emergency services. I'm very excited to bring to you a variety of amazing guests and topics. So let's get started with today's episode. Welcome to the Symmetry Sessions. So joining me back a second time to talk about the power of nature to heal, military veteran, psychotherapist, and co-founder of the Warriors Nature Retreat Program, please welcome back Beau Laviolette. Hi, Beau.
Hey, Heather. How are you?
How's it going?
Yeah, it's going well. It's going great. A lot of very busy since last time we spoke, and a lot of good stuff happening. How about you?
Well, this morning I woke up with kind of a raspy voice. I'm guessing is a bit of allergies.
Yeah.
Nature can be kind of a bitch, but also she
Speaking
can
of
be
nature,
quite, speaking of nature, she can also be quite healing as well. So,
that's good.
good segue, right?
That is perfect. Perfect. I never thought about it. I'm like, hey, nature's awesome. Nature's great. And then it's like, oh, well, maybe nature has some parts too.
Yeah. Yes, she does. She's trying to kill me right now.
Right.
Yeah, I like that. That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you do the Warrior Nature Retreat, and I guess I'm curious about like why nature. What's your experience with nature as being a healing agent?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I could talk about that. Um, And let me say this before we get started. You're just great. You're awesome. I don't know if it's I wish everyone could do a show with you because your energy. I don't know. Just the way you started off just now puts me at ease. So I
Oh,
appreciate it. Thank you.
thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah. It's very very relaxed. Um, which I guess is a perfect segue into what your question is because nature is just that on a much bigger scale. So, how it applies to, we've talked about IFS last time,
Hmm.
and that's what this experience is an IFS nature retreat. So we do other things, but that is really the bulk of it. And so there we have self energy, but when we get into nature has so much more of that. So that's how I would explain nature. There's a healing component to it. There's a lot of self energy to it that creates an atmosphere that you could do your work in. So it's no different than any other atmosphere where you don't feel judged, but it's on a much bigger scale that you kind of have to experience.
Yeah, there's a lot of research that shows that being at the beach or being in the forest has such a calming effect on people. And I guess when we talk about EMDR, when we do the whole safe, calm place, those are kind of the big options that people use to calm themselves down is, thinking about being in that space.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and it has just such a calming effect and a soothing effect on the nerves. And
Hmm.
um, yeah, and I also heard like, some wives' tale-y kind of things about, nature being a healer. Like I read once that, or maybe somebody told me, I don't remember, but that mimosa trees, if you're grieving, standing under a mimosa tree is supposed to be like, I don't know. But it's
Mm,
interesting. It's very interesting.
interesting. Yeah, that is
Yeah.
interesting. I haven't heard that, but it makes sense. It makes sense. You mentioned a tree, and so Ray Mound, who's an IFS therapist who does these retreats with me. He turned me on to this. He's actually a Vietnam veteran, Army medic. He walked the Appalachian Trail, and
Wow.
so he turned me on to this. And he comes and he says, "Hey, Beau, have you ever spoke to a tree?" And I'm like, I don't, not that I can recall, you know. And I said, well, let me try to speak to a tree. He said, well, try listening to a tree. He says, yeah, this is a whole other thing. So go by the tree and just listen to it. And I did that. And what I experienced was something I wasn't waiting for. And it was very, very connecting to my soul, to my spirit. It brought me back to some experiences in my life that I remember that was not the best experiences in my life. And it was just slowing down and connecting with this thing in that was in the forest, right? So
Hmm.
it makes sense that these trees and all these things in nature can help us do our work that we're trying to do.
Well, I suppose like when we look at the philosophy of internal family systems, IFS, the concept of self is, and I always like talking about this piece, you know, it's, I always think of it as like your Buddha nature. It sort of supersedes or transcends things like personality, like only parts hold personality, right? It
Mm-hmm.
is tapping into this oneness, and that, human beings aren't just part of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
The trees
Sure.
and the animals must be too. And so it kind of makes sense that there would be probably an exchange of healing to be
Mm.
present in the outside world, in the
Yeah,
environment.
yeah, sure, sure. There is. It's kind of like, and I think what happens is it really, when we pay attention. Somebody mentioned this to me. He says, but when you pay attention to the trees, they respond to you, and they move, and it sounds kind of out there if you're not into this, but it's true. I love what you just shared. There is an exchange that takes place, and it allows us to slow down and do something like be aware of a tree, or be aware of um, a river, or be aware of fire, which is
Yeah.
something that we don't normally do. We're always busy. We're always running.
Right. As human beings, we've gotten really removed from, especially with
Hmm.
tech, we've gotten really removed from our
Hmm.
natural environment. And to your point, the trees and the flora and fauna are exchanging messages all the time that human beings don't even know how to read anymore, because we're
Hmm.
so removed and distanced from it. But, one of the things that I love to do is, I'm a bird nerd. I like
Great.
watching the
Yeah. Yeah.
birds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And when you watch them, you can tell that they're better weather interpreters than any of our forecasters.
Hmm. Hmm.
They know, if you watch their behavior, what's happening, long before we do. And it's very interesting. And I think one of the things during the pandemic for me was bird watching really helped me decompress from the stress of what was going on. And there's tons of research on that, to back that up. Just listening to bird song is very calming. So,
Yeah.
think about being in nature and you've got all of it, right? You've got
Yeah.
all of that going on, the trees, the birds, the wind,
Hmm.
all
Hmm.
all being a part of that, all meant to create, you know, calm
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
connectedness. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. I didn't realize you had the passion for
Oh
bird
yeah.
watching. That's pretty interesting. Which I know about this much of it, not much, and but I can see how what you just said. There are all these different elements, like just sitting down listening to birds sing, or the sounds that birds have can
Hmm.
be very peaceful. I mean, I was just listening to. I pulled up my Spotify and I could just type in meditation songs or bird sounds, and it's so pleasant. But picture being in nature where you have everything in this environment that creates so much of those C's. Like in IFS, we talk about the qualities itself. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. So I get why that would be helpful to people who are looking to heal from experiences they've had in the past. But what specifically do you find? Because it's my understanding that the Warriors Nature Retreat is specific to veterans. And what does that look like? And how do those two things sync together? Nature and vets.
Yeah. Okay. Good question. So I think the where I could start with that is that it really gets us back to our roots, right? It gets us back to Mother Nature. It gets us back to things that we used to be able to connect with, and um, so it just makes sense. It makes sense that obviously veterans and non-veterans too, who can benefit from this. Um, and but to have something that we can connect to and that could bring us back to our roots. The other thing I see is that a lot of veterans have a hard time going to therapy, walking into an office, a
Mm-hmm.
therapist's office, right? This is not uncommon. This is real. That even the thought of going to therapy brings up all kinds of parts. But there's just something different about nature. We could be doing the exact same thing in nature as we do in the office, but it's just different for those reasons that we shared. But I think it sort of removes some of the stigma that that is connected with therapy. Unfortunately, that's
Yeah,
connected with
because
therapy.
it can feel sterile.
Yeah.
Even in the
Mhm.
nicest of offices, I think there's a uptightness to it. Well, it can,
Yeah.
especially
Sure.
with non-vet clinicians.
Yeah. 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 Sure.
But it's funny because, like, I feel like human beings have gotten to a point where they're like, "Well, I don't need Mother Nature anymore." Like we're not
Hmm.
dependent on her every movement to survive anymore. And
Hmm.
so we're
Hmm.
so but and so we're so removed from it that we've ruined it too.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
so there's so many multiple levels of that, like, symbiotic exchange, that it's healing for the vet, but it's also healing to the environment that people are paying attention to it, you know?
Yeah. 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 Sure.
And I think, as a veteran, I'm sure all of us have had to be somewhat mindful of our environment to some degree. I mean,
Hmm. Hmm.
I was in the Navy. I wasn't on Navy ships. I was on government contracted ships doing security, but
Hmm.
we were always mindful of the seas and how she was behaving, and what does that mean for us, and
Right.
you know um and so, I love going on a cruise. It brings me back to that. Again, there's this symbiotic relationship, you
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
getting along together. Go ahead.
No, no, that's in fact I'm really highlighting what you're saying and taking away this thing that you're talking about the relationship.
Mhm.
And Ray has taught me that too, is that this is a wow, a relationship. And here in Louisiana we have you mentioned something about, Mother Nature can be something
Yeah.
sometimes, and we have these here in Louisiana, we have these hurricanes,
Yeah.
and I mean you talk about um, and I remember we had one coming. It was a pretty big hurricane, and Ray said he said, "Hey, are you going to go outside tonight and just be in the hurricane?" I'm like, "Well, I didn't plan on it. I'm going to barricade with me and my wife and my two boys. That's what I was planning on doing." But there is an energy that there's a different energy with different situations in terms of when it comes to nature, right? That can be very
Yeah.
energizing, very scary, that could bring up our parts, that could be very peaceful.
Mhm.
So it really is, and I'm just kind of getting this as we're talking, it really is a whole system, not just self energy, but parts of nature and
Mhm.
things that it could bring up in us as
Well,
well.
and just like in our system, when we are stressed, our parts ramp up. The more stress she has with our neglect,
Hmm.
um, the more her parts are doing things like tornadoes and hurricanes, and that is
Hmm.
actually factual. That like this is going to be the hottest summer in so far. I think that's what I read.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I'm in New Jersey. We had a
Hmm.
tornado a couple years ago. Like that doesn't happen. You know what I mean? Um,
Right.
we just got through a very small drought, and now it's raining forever.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
it's all out of balance, and
Yeah.
part of that is. Oh, by the way, during the drought, there were birds just dropping out of the sky. There wasn't enough resources for them, and so it is such a tenuous balance.
Hmm.
It's such an intricate system that, of course, it's the butterfly wing ripple effect
Hmm.
thing.
Hmm.
And I don't think people acknowledge how much humans play a part in that.
Yeah. Hmm. Sure.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
but of course, I do think that there is forgiveness in her if we start changing our relationship, our
Yeah.
connection to her.
Yeah, and that is, I mean, there's so many lessons and so many experience, just so many things that we can tap into when it comes to this topic. I love it, and you're doing a great job highlighting and I think reminding me and our listeners that this is really, um, if we slow down, if we can connect to something that I think we've lost. That's kind of where I go back to is
Yeah.
just, in fact, one of the things that the whole message of our nature retreats is to unplug, connect, and let go. That's the message. That's what we're doing.
Mhm.
So we're unplugging from our cell phones, we're unplugging from social media, we're unplugging from our emails. We're also unplugging from our minds, right? The chatter that goes on. And we're connecting with nature, we're connecting with other human beings in a healthy way. So
Mm.
we could work on letting go of some of the habits and hangups that keep us stuck, right? But the first step is to be able to unplug, right? Is
Mhm.
to be able to unplug and then shift our thinking to what you and I are talking about right now. Like how many people I don't know. I actually might I think I would be surprised because I was fixing to say how many people don't think like this. But maybe when you get down to it and you get people alone and you say, hey, what do you think about this nature stuff? What do you think about, like you said, this is a relationship that we're having. You would be surprised how many veterans who've never been in therapy before connect with nature in a way that wouldn't have thought. This person here who is a Marine and who's never been in therapy and he doesn't talk about his feelings, what kind of outcome he had by the time by the end of just 2.5 days of doing this work.
Yeah. So, what does a retreat kind of look like on the day to day? And how long are they?
So this whole program is actually 3 phases. So I'll talk about the
Yeah.
first phase, which is what we're kind of here to mostly talk about, but I'm happy to do the other two as well. But the first phase is the actual nature retreat. So before the retreat, we have just some pre-work, an assessment that we do. We do a call with the group, and then we do the actual retreat. So the retreat consists of um, 8 veterans. When we first started doing this, it was 8 veterans. Okay, so we get a lodge here in Louisiana. The lodge holds 8 veterans. We have 2 master bedrooms for me and my assistant goes in, and he's in the other room, and then there's two bunk rooms, 4 and 4. So you can imagine veterans are used to this because they're used to bunk rooms and all this
Right.
kind of stuff, right? But it really is a lodge in the corner of this, God, 600, 700 acre park, right? And what it is it's 2.5 days. It's on me and my assistant. We go the night before just to get settled, to get centered, so we get ready for the veterans to come. They come Friday morning, and it's all day Friday, all day Saturday, half a day Sunday. We do graduation ceremony on Sunday, and basically the whole experience is this. We have group work that we do. So we have everything is pretty much done outside. When they get to the property, we call that arrival. So they arrive to the property and they work to turn things off, like their cell phones. They turn in their cell phones. We give them an opportunity to really be in a position where they can let go of some of these things and unplug from some of these things. We check in the living room, and once we do that, everybody introduces themselves. We work towards moving to the outside, and pretty much everything that we do is going to be outside, right? We have a fire pit. Everyone circles around the fire pit, and we start doing IFS work. We start doing parts work. The So we do that in a group. Once we After so much time in the group, we educate them. Everybody's sort of just talking about what's coming up. Then we do what's called individual reflection time. So basically, each person goes off and they pick a trail, go next to a pond, a river, whatever, and they just do reflection time, or they have reflection time on what came up in the group, right? Once they do that, then they come back to the group and we debrief a little bit about what just happened. And then we have something called a buddy walk, where they partner with one other person and they share what is coming up based off those experiences, right? So
That's very cool.
that's pretty much the whole thing. It consists of individual work, buddy work that you may not want to share in a whole group, but you'll talk to, maybe you'll share with one other person, and then we have individual time, right? So. Mhm.
This is such a good format because it reminds me of in Dick Schwartz's book, You Are the One You've Been Waiting For, when he
Mhm.
talks about, like, you know, 40 years down the road, into doing this work, sometimes his wife steps on a landmine in his psyche
Mhm.
and he has a reaction. And what he does with that is he removes himself, he thinks about it, he communes with that part of him. Then he returns back to his wife to share what he learned about himself. And
Mhm.
so it's
Mhm.
such a beautiful way that when we are triggered, we can still catch it, communicate it, and not make the other person responsible for it. So it kind of sounds like the beginning of
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
skill of, like,
Mhm.
processing things as a group, going and reflecting on what is this for me, and then sharing what you learned with someone and building that trust. That's really cool.
Yeah, it is it really is a positive experience, and throughout the whole retreat, throughout the whole experience, we're doing that multiple times. So it's not it's done once, and then we keep building on the skills. So we as I said earlier, the bulk of it is IFS, but I also bring EMDR into the experience, and see how can we use bilateral stimulation in nature to tap into some of these resources as well. So
Cool.
so yeah, that's an amazing experience, and we've gotten some good feedback from that. So that's the whole thing, right? So we're doing it, right? We're teaching them a little bit. Uh, they're going off and doing their work. We're debriefing it. They're connecting with one other person, and then we repeat, right? We repeat. We teach them something else. They go off and do their work, do it as a group, and then reflect with an individual. Um, and what's good about it is they don't always partner with. By the end of the experience, everyone would have partnered with somebody different.
Oh,
So
good. Yeah.
everybody gets a long time with each person, so you really get to know each individual on a more intimate level.
Wow, that's really neat. Does this take place in Louisiana too, or do you guys go all over the place? Where do these retreats
So
happen?
our first that they are in Louisiana. It's called Chico State Park. Currently, that's where we're doing them. It's a pretty good setup there. Um, our goal is to do them in other states for sure. We actually did our first one. It was with a group of IFS therapists, but it was where Ray is at the Hill Reservation, which is in around Boston. And
Oh,
it's a
yeah.
funny story because he invited me. Ray's out there, man. He said, "Look, we're gonna get tents, and we're gonna just
Really
there's an
rough it?
outhouse. I mean, really rough it." And I'm like, hey, man, I'm all right, man. Look, I'm game. Let's do whatever. And what I didn't realize is he invited me to Boston to do a nature retreat, sleeping in a tent in November.
Oh, no.
and, I'm like, and I'm like, yeah. What's the big deal? I mean, I'm thinking here in Louisiana, it's like whatever, 75, 80 degrees in November.
Oh,
And I
no.
go there, and I was in for a rude awakening. I was freezing. I mean, I
Yeah.
said so. Lesson learned: don't go to Boston and sleep in a tent in November. Yeah.
Yeah. That
They were
is
just
funny.
waiting for me, man. They were just waiting for me. So we did our first one there, and then I just experienced something. There was a few experiences I had out there. It was my first time doing this, um, that I wouldn't have experienced in an office. So I just knew I had to start this year. I knew I had to do it. Uh, and I do it with anyone who wants to do it. We did, well, obviously, we're focused on veterans. I just recently did one actually for therapists.
Mhm.
So I did one for therapists here. Just anyone who's interested in nature and wants to do
Yeah.
some IFS work, wants to do some EMDR stuff. That's
I'm so interested in
yeah.
how you're using nature to do bilateral stimulation with EMDR. That's fascinating.
Yeah. So what we do, it's part of the education piece where we're at, we form as a group, and then I introduce this idea of what EMDR is, but specifically focus on bilateral stimulation and how EMDR uses that to process memories. So we invite people to use that while they're going on their hike.
Oh,
and
cool.
so we do a little bit as a group to get them used to what it is. But being in the military, I thought about it. When we're walking, when we're doing cadence or we're walking, we're doing bilateral stimulation,
It's
right?
true. Left, left,
Left,
left, right, left.
right,
Yeah.
left, right, and I
Right.
didn't even know it. We were doing EMDR, and I didn't even know it back then. See,
Sneaky,
so
sneaky.
yeah, yep. That's it. They were starting early, right?
Yeah.
Getting us ready. But so really, it's up to the individual. They can actually, as long as it's tapping, as long as there's left and right movement. So it could be by walking and focusing on your hike. It could be picking up two sticks and just tapping in them, right?
Mhm.
It could be sitting by a river and using a butterfly tap or a tapping on your knees. That's very common with EMDR. People will use
Yeah.
that. So it really is. We just invite people to do it if they feel comfortable doing that. Um, and when they come back, it's usually all positive. Like the experience. This is what I get from that is that it just enhanced their experience.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what bilateral stimulation was doing for them.
Right.
The
Yeah.
positive experience that they were having, it was just better focusing on their tapping.
Yeah. Very cool. Is it open to across genders, or is it, I guess, because I'm thinking
hmm
about
hmm
safety and things like that?
Yeah, so we actually have right now currently it's an all male veteran retreat. We have one. Hopefully next year we can start doing where it's all female. I have a female IFS female therapist who actually we did. She was a PA for me in my level one, and we become good friends. And she's a Air Force veteran, so we want to include that start
Yeah.
very as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Hmm.
That's very cool.
Yeah,
Very
yeah,
cool.
yeah. Because I have a few female veterans right now that I see, and they would love. They're just waiting. They're chomping at the bit to do one of these.
I bet.
Coming, it's coming.
It sounds so cool. Um, and I think to your point before about like nature and veterans, I think, you know, because psychotherapy can feel so, I don't know, or they can have bad experiences with it, right?
Hmm.
Um, I think there are a lot of organizations out there that do like, um, you know, try to incorporate that with surfing, or there's a lot of like, let's just go fishing or what, and a lot of it is more acceptable to do to that to our community,
Hmm. Hmm.
to use these things as a way to make it easier to connect.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you're bringing that up because it is, and what's so interesting, I could be wrong, but it's to the non-therapist population. This is accepted. This is appreciated. This is what we've been waiting for, kind of thing. But I feel like in the therapist community, it's kind of the opposite. It's like, wait a minute, we don't usually do this.
Yeah.
This is different. This is not 50-minute therapy sessions, and I think it makes sense that there's be some nervous parts around doing something like this.
Well,
But
I think some of that changed just a little bit as when
Mhm.
during the pandemic, when a lot of clinicians decided they had to do walk and talk therapy,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
Yeah.
It did change things, even with EMDR. I talked to therapists who before COVID said, you cannot do EMDR online. You
Yeah.
cannot zero. I mean, there's no if, ands, or buts. You can't do this. And guess what?
Yeah.
So I think the pandemic changed things. Like, wait a minute, we can do this. And if anything, it actually is. In some cases, it could maybe be better for people who are open to doing something like this.
I think in the counseling community, in the therapist community, I think they get scared of anything because of, the immediate response is like, what's the liability?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think, our licensing boards just need to get with the program a little bit
Yeah.
more.
I
Yeah.
think that it would be nice to just catch up. We need to update those parts.
That's
Just,
right.
update those parts. This is how things are done now, and it's just an amazing experience. We're working on. I have some feedback testimonials from the guys who have done this the last couple of retreats, but I'm working with the IFS Foundation for Self Leadership, which is the IFS Foundation, that we're working on creating a video of these experiences over the last couple of years to
Yeah.
show people this is what we've been doing, and these veterans are dying to help, um, which which moves into the some of the other phases of the program. I could talk about that, or
Yeah.
we
Well,
could.
my next question to you was going to be like,
Mhm.
so we know, a little bit about some of the things that are happening, but what are the real objectives? You know, what's the specifics around what people go there for, and how they're working through that?
Yeah, people are coming there who have um, they're showing same reason why they would come to therapy, to work on some of the symptoms that have been showing up in their life that's getting them in the way of their relationships with their
Hmm.
spouses. So some of the common things that I see might be some working on their anger, maybe working on some um, alcohol use, those firefighters that come up,
Mhm.
work
Mhm.
on isolation and depression, and they've just lost the ability to connect with other like-minded people who are trying to do the same thing. Uh,
Mhm.
so I would say maybe a little bit more than half of them are combat veterans. They've seen combat, so they've kind of have experienced the horrors of that. So they're coming in and working to some degree on that. What I've noticed is that it doesn't really. I mean, it doesn't really matter per se. If I haven't noticed that in the retreats where we have some veterans who have not seen combat and some veterans who have seen combat, it's all the same. All
Mhm.
veterans are connecting with each veteran the same way. So
Mhm.
um, that's probably the biggest thing is just to be able to connect with like-minded individuals who are trying to do the same thing. So we've seen everything from anger to depression to some of our veterans are really struggling with a lot of them actually are struggling with the suicidal thinking and
Mhm.
just going there to that place.
Mhm.
Um, Losing touch with their spirituality, their beliefs in their God, and they've lost their way. And again, connecting with that through other like-minded veterans who are trying to do that.
Mhm. Mhm.
Mhm.
Cool. What were you gonna
The Yeah, the phases.
Mhm.
So what I was going to say is so that's the first phase, right? So we put 8 to 10 veterans through this experience, right? And once they go through this experience, what I found that works is to keep the momentum going. So it doesn't matter what you're doing, whether it's going to a retreat or going to a rehab or whatever. Um, if you stop doing it, then it just doesn't last, right? It's very easy to go back to your normal environment and life if you don't keep the momentum going. So what we've done is we've put these veterans into a monthly group. So the
Cool.
ones who have gone through the retreat, they also stay in touch monthly. We meet once a month, and it's just a way to connect, stay connected, to get support, to check in. We have a veteran who has gone through a retreat who has about 75 acres of property here in Louisiana, and he hosts different events where they come out, fish, throw axes, whatever veterans do. But
Uh,
just to stay connected. And I've had a lot. I've had a veteran call me the other day, and he said, I just want to thank you for inviting me to this experience because it allowed me to connect with, and he mentioned this veteran's name. And he said, I was struggling the other day. He's also a cop here. And he said, I was struggling the other day and I called up, the guy and I went to his property and we just hung out. It helped me. So, um, so we do that. And then we do one more thing because I think if we just did these two phases, it would be a great program. But I still felt like something was missing because of what these veterans were telling me. And this is what we've done. This is where the magic happens. We invite the veterans in phase three, the ones who have gone through the retreat and the ones who are still engaged. We invite them to come back and serve as mentors.
oh, I love that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So they actually come back. We rent another lodge. There's only two in the corner, and they come back and serve as mentors. So they are giving back, which veterans love to do. They want to help other veterans. They want to make
Yeah, man.
that is amazing. That I always say you can only keep what you have by giving it away, right? So you have to. Um, you have to do that. So they come back and they're being of service. They're helping other veterans. You know, I, there's a few things that there's actually three ways studies have shown that people have tried to destigmatize therapy. The best approach to doing that is what we're doing here, where you are the spokesperson. You're the thing that you're trying to destigmatize. You get someone who is going through that, who has gone through that, to share their story, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
or to advocate for that. So these veterans are coming to a retreat that are also they're being held by other veterans who have gone to the retreat. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's really it's almost a perfect deal.
Yeah. I because I just wrote a blog post on Symmetry's site that came out on Friday about kind of calling out medical and healthcare professionals about the cultural biases that they have about military veterans and how, if a veteran has experienced that, it could mean that they don't get the care that they need, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And so, I mean, honestly, I'm a huge proponent of there needs to be more of us in this field, because who can understand that culture better than those that have been there? But what you're doing is just like that on a whole nother level, and I think it's such an important movement
Mm-hmm.
to show um, that there are people who understand because we've been there, and on so many levels, right? For this program, not only do we speak the same language, in terms of military speak, but we've also already gone through this too. And
That's right.
so that's beautiful, man.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I can't tell you how many people come to me that, had bad experiences with a civilian clinician and almost didn't reach out. And it makes you wonder how many don't, because, they feel stigmatized, in so many ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think, with more of us in the field, we can ensure that that our brothers and sisters aren't another statistic.
Yeah, yeah. Right, right, right. And
Yeah.
and 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 I'm hoping to eventually at some point just really grow this to where we're training other therapists to
Yeah.
do this and what exactly what you're talking about. This is really working, and the more therapists we can have that can do this and think like this and be there with the same approach that we're doing it, the better, the more veterans we can have, which is part of why we did the nature retreat we did one for therapists, as I said earlier, but it was for therapists who worked with veterans. So it
Mm-hmm.
was specifically for those therapists who worked with veterans to kind of put them through the same experience that their clients are going through for the ones
Yeah.
who do the experience. Yeah,
Yeah. That's really cool.
yeah,
Well, what else about this program?
yeah. So we that's pretty much where we are. The big thing that we're trying to do uh, is we're trying to raise some money for it. We're trying to raise
Mm-hmm.
funding to
Mm-hmm.
to avoid having to, we want this to be a worry-free program for these veterans to come in. So I've partnered with the Foundation for Self Leadership, the IFS Foundation,
Uh-huh.
and you mentioned this. I co-founded the Healing Corps, which
Mm-hmm.
is to bring IFS to veterans. So we partnered with them to they're piloting this program. So we're working towards funding through that. We're working on raising, grant money for that.
Mm-hmm.
Just as much as support that we can. So that's kind of the focus. There's obviously it doesn't getting veterans is not an issue. There's more than enough veterans to go around who are
Sure.
waiting to do this, and I'm sure there's funds. We just are trying to find a way to get that
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
really keep this going. It cost about $20,000 to put 10 veterans through this whole thing. Right,
Wow.
that pays for everything. That pays for
Yeah.
everything. Um, and even the research. So and this is where the foundation comes in, is they're helping with collecting research so we can get more funding for this, and we can show people that this works. You mentioned research with nature, and so we're working on that as well.
Yeah. Wow. So important. And how do you stay self-led with all of this? I mean, it's a lot to manage, to put one of these things together, and also to have such, big goals for it in the future.
Yeah, that's a good question because it is. Right now it is doable. We're getting. Thank God for my assistant, Ray. He really supports me in this. He gets my back. You know, um,
Hmm.
when we need it. So I think we're moving into a place with this program where we are getting more support. You know, the inviting the veterans to come back and help. This is something that's fairly new, so we're just getting a feel for it.
Hmm.
But that's I'm doing those monthly calls. I think the goal would be to just pass that on to one of the veterans, the leaders, who does these monthly activities. Just give him the opportunity to be on of service on a whole new level.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
it helps me out. I can put my time and energy to other things. So I think just delegating, and I got a part that has a hard time with delegating. So how do I stay led? I see my IFS therapist.
Yeah, yeah.
I do my first therapist.
Have you reached out to the VFW at all? Because every now and then they run that program. Or that, not program. God, I can't think of the word. They do this thing, and I was part of it for 1 year, where they reach out to veterans who are still serving in some way, and it's called
Mm-hmm.
hashtag still serving.
Hmm.
And mine ended up being a 2-page spread in one of the VFW magazines. But every now and then they, um, put something on their website about it, or uh,
Yeah, no, I'm gonna check it out. I'm gonna check it out. We've tapped into a couple of veteran programs.
mhm.
We're doing a fundraising event this year. It's a fishing charter thing. So you mentioned fishing, right? Yep.
Yeah,
There's a cigar shop around it. I'm going to do one at a cigar shop. Cigars, fishing. We'll figure out a way to get some veterans in here, right?
yeah.
So there's some a lot of our organizations actually. We have a nonprofit who just said, yeah, every year you do this, we'll be happy to contribute. So
That's
we're
awesome.
just trying to, yeah, I'm knocking on doors and I'm trying to get the word out.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is so cool. And what an awesome program, and a much needed program. One of the things you hear people still saying, and some of these veteran organizations still do this, and I don't know why. It's probably semantics for me, and but it annoys me. Um, the whole 22, right? Well, it actually stopped being 22 around 2019 or so, or 2020. And now it's down to 17. Not that that's better. I mean, it's better, but it's not where we
Yeah.
need it to be,
True.
right? That we lose that many veterans. But I think what an impact a program like this could make to even lower that statistic even more, because I think a lot of veterans think that they are at the mercy of going to the veterans affairs hospitals
Mhm.
for their care. A lot of them walk away feeling like it just wasn't what they needed, and I think showing them that there's more out there that can help with how they feel is so important in lowering that statistic.
Exactly, and that's another part to it that it's really a non-judgmental. You're not picking a number here and waiting, and you're
Yeah.
you're really a part of something much bigger. And the group just being able to connect. There's one thing about this experience I didn't mention that I need to tell you about because it's so important. We have a fire ritual. And the fire ritual is we have it on both nights. And there's a ceremony that we do for the fire ritual. And after we do that, then we sort of really like lay back, right? We literally sit around a fire and connect. And right, we put away the exercises, the therapy work. We've done, we put away that until the next day, and we're just really sitting around and talking and
Mhm.
just shooting stuff, just sharing military stories. I mean, obviously, there's a whole bunch of that going on, right?
Yeah, yeah,
It, and it is so I can't tell you. Even for me, I noticed that because when I got out of the Marines, I just sort of I lost touch. There's this idea that we're gonna stay in touch with, hey guy, man, I'm gonna stay in touch with you. We're gonna see each other every year, and it just doesn't happen,
yeah, yeah,
right? And
yeah. I forget what his name was. I actually may have mentioned this in a previous podcast. I don't know if it was with you. Um, and I'll have to look this up and find he was a journalist and I can't remember his name, but I think he traveled with the Marines for a little while and he wrote this whole article and he did this talk on like why veterans miss war. And he talks about how we actually don't. We just miss each other. We miss camaraderie.
yeah,
We
yeah.
miss that bond. And it's very interesting because it's very hard to explain that bond to civilians.
Mhm.
I always make the joke of, nothing brings us closer together than staring down death together.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
like, not everybody's having that experience either. But there is something about the battle buddy that is just sacred and so hard to explain. And when you compare that, like that relationship doesn't have to end
Yeah.
just because our service did. Now it's what carries us through the rest of our lives. I think that's the stuff right there.
It it really is, and I didn't realize that until I experienced it, and until I did the first retreat, because I was in there too. I was in there too, and we're just reminiscing and we're talking, and it's amazing. People will throughout the night will kind of form their, they'll go off with one or two or one person that really they want to connect with, and it's and obviously as the group, it really is. That was actually a whole nother thing that I wasn't experiencing. I was thinking, oh, at the end of the day, we'll eat and that'll be it. But this is a whole nother, yeah, experience that was very, very therapeutic that I wasn't waiting for.
Because it's like going back to a healthier deployment. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes, yes,
yeah,
exactly. This and because we mostly talk about that. We talk, hey, in basic training, in boot camp, and things
yeah.
when at the time it seemed like that was hard, and there was parts of it that was obviously hard, but it was pretty good stuff. Good reminiscing stories.
Yeah, one of the ways I think one of my vet clients and I kind of decompress from EMDR, which can be intense sometimes, and the parts work is just reminiscing, just telling those silly boot camp stories and it's also fun listening to other branches experiences of things too and how that translates. Go ahead.
No, 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 no. I was just you could finish. I was just totally. That was a whole nother thing too. Just to see me, we had a Army guy there, Navy, couple of Navy guys, Marines, and Ray, who's Army. He said, "Man, you Marines are just nuts." It was something else, and it was that was a whole nother element too. That I actually, I'm glad you brought that up. That was it was just interesting to see that dynamic play out. It was it was good.
Because, even though each branch has their own like different dialect, I would say in the military lingo, um, we have different experiences. And there's still this like brotherly, sisterly love between the branches, right? Like we can make fun of each other, but like, don't you talk about my brother that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, so I always try to keep it lighthearted as well. Like we can have that banter because we know it comes from a place of love. One day
Yeah.
I was giving some psychoeducation about what EMDR might look like. And I said, and at the end we'll do a calm down technique, and sometimes I change that up. I said, sometimes we'll just relax and talk shit. Sometimes maybe we'll color for a while because I know how much you Marines like your crayons.
Yeah, yeah,
And
that's funny.
immediately it just brings that connection together. Like, oh yeah, I get it.
It is because we have this thing where one of the guys in the army, I said, "Hey, you know what army stands for, huh?" And I said, "Aren't ready to be Marines yet."
Yeah.
And he came back and he said, "Yeah, that's because we can't get our IQ low enough." So
Uh,
we have one of my clients. She was in Marines, and she immediately she sat down and she knew I was in the Marines, and we had an instant connection because especially Navy also. Navy, we in fact, we have a chaplain that's going to be doing our next retreat
oh,
from
that's wonderful.
California who's trying to bring this. He's still active duty, and he's really trying to bring this program into his world.
Yeah,
And so that's something that we're excited about as well.
that's very cool.
We have. I'll share this one more thing. Um, at the end of the retreat, I've talked about the whole experience, the individual work, the reflection time, the group time, the debriefing, learning, doing your parts work, the fire ritual at night. But at the end of the day, I mean, at the end of the retreat, we have a graduation ceremony, and each person basically goes around and shares something that they took away, um, or something positive about each individual. So let's say you were in my retreat, you'd have about 8 other people just pouring love.
Yeah, it's like the opposite of in the Navy we call it captain's mast when you get in trouble and what it looks like is, and I don't know if other branches do it this way when they get in trouble, but at captain's mast you have all the upper chain all
Mm-hmm.
contributing to what a shitbag you are. So
Exactly.
and this is the opposite, and that's where the healing comes from, right? That's awesome.
Exactly. So you're not a shit bag. You are more than enough, right? It's
Yeah.
you're not on the hot seat. It kind of feels like you're on the hot seat because you're like not used to people saying all these positive things
Yeah.
about you. You can give it. You're good at giving it, but receiving it.
Receiving.
So
Yeah.
we have this. We're ending with a very very positive experience from the whole thing, from the beginning to the very end. That these participants are dying to talk about, to share, to come back and serve.
Yeah.
Um, so
So cool.
it's awesome. I love nature. I love IFS. I love EMDR. Um,
By the way, before you go,
yeah.
if you remember from our last episode together, you taught me about using the analogy of the gig line. Do you remember?
Yes, I
Yeah.
remember that.
I
Yeah.
have expanded on this. I don't know if you can see my whiteboard. I've got firefighters, I've got the infantry, special forces, I have,
Love
um,
that.
recon and EOD being some of managers.
I love it.
Yeah.
You really took this to a whole new level. I
I
love it.
really did. And guess what? They love it. They love it.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm glad, you talked about the relationship between us and nature, and I'm glad we have this relationship here.
Yeah,
I
me
want to
too.
enjoy this. Thank you again.
Yeah, I'm so looking forward to how this evolves, and I want to know more about how I can be involved because it's really such a valuable movement.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. You're going to just have to do the next one then. I'm going to invite you. You're going to have to come here to
I'll be
Louisiana,
there.
man.
And maybe I can force my husband to come too.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
We're gonna do it all.
All right. Thank you so much, Beau.
And I'm going to share the link to the for the foundation, and it
Please
has
do.
more information. If somebody's interested in nature retreats for veterans, if you're looking to give your own nature retreat and you don't work with veterans, it's the same thing. I think it would be the same layout. So there's information on that page that you might find interesting.
Awesome. Looking forward to getting those resources out.
Okay.
Thank you so much for taking the time again to talk about all of the things and veterans and what you're doing to support them. It's such invaluable work.
I appreciate you, Heather. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay. Bye bye.
Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you're interested in connecting with Heather or the guest today, please see the show notes for that info. If you'd like to be a guest on the Symmetry Sessions, the link to send us your request is also in the show notes. If you enjoyed the show and you'd like to show some support, buy me a coffee at www.buymeacoffee.com/symmetrysesh, SYMMETRYSESH. You can make a small donation to help keep the episodes coming. And when you buy me a coffee, you're supporting small business professionals and podcasters. Every donation helps me to get better podcasting equipment and network to find new and interesting guests. Don't miss an episode. The Symmetry Sessions launches every first Friday of the month, so make sure you subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Until next time.